All right, guys. Jim Bounds at Motorhome Rehab Ranch again. And how about that? Just got back from a trip to Cheyenne, Wyoming. And this is a lot of fun. It's what this is about. These things are made to drive. So, what I would like to do here is for you guys that are recovering a motorhome, you purchased a motorhome and now you're going to get it home. And basically, that's what we did here. Yes, I knew the motorhome, but for 2 years, I did not. Plus, I'm not first person knowledgeable as to what this coach has going for it right then. So here's what you want to do. Okay? Any system that is not, remember this, we're not on vacation here. This is a mission. You're on a mission because you've got a bundle of joy. Now you think you know it, but you need to know it to rely on it. And when you're on the road, when you're out on a thin limb, you must rely on that machine, right? You want to cut down the amount of systems that you're going to rely on, okay? Example, we're driving this thing. We're not going to live in it. We're not going to stop. We're not going to Disneyland or anything. So I turned off the living area electrical system completely, okay? We don't have the benefit of a generator on this run because the shop that it was at was a really good paint shop for RV, which is very special, but their mechanical prowess was a little to be desired. After we got the initial diagnosis that there was a problem with either the board or something, we had them stop. I believe the problem was in the brushes, but we're going to stop right there. That's not a mission critical system. Okay. I wish it were there. And the way it worked out, I really do wish that generator had worked. But it's not a mission critical system. Think of this as a 26-foot car. Think of the systems your car needs to go. All right. So generator's out, living area electrical system is out. All right. Why? Because we just don't know exactly what's there until we really investigate. Right? So we have the engine electrical system, one battery. The living area batteries were bad. So we put one good battery in it, just like a car. All right. And we have to work on the engine systems, the power steering. We do not care about air conditioning. Why? Because it's cold. I actually cut the 7619 AC belt, take it off. In case it throws out, that was just stopped for no reason, right? We left the power steering and alternator belts on, tightened those up, made sure they were in good shape, right? We have to rely on the alternator system, which we found out that we couldn't, but I'll get there. And we had to check the tires, we had to check brakes, all the basic stuff, right? All right, so coach, looks good. Like I said, there are shops that focus on paint, mechanical, interior, things like that. When Dennis broke down, it was a mechanical problem, but because of where he was able to get his coach painted, which worked out real well. Right? Now, the problem that he had was two of his 5-tech injectors clogged up. All right. You say, why is that? Because there was something that got into the injectors bigger than 10 microns. All right. That's what happened. What it is doesn't matter. So we had 4 new injectors put in. Plus, I believe you've already seen, witnessed, or whatever, the fuel system, the 2-stage fuel system. We want to cut it down with a 100 micron glass filter, a cleanable filter so you can clean it. And then we want to use a 7 micron 33689 Wix or equivalent. Phytech also has a 10 micron stainless steel cleanable filter. But whatever we do, we've got to have clean film 10 microns or under going to the fuel injection. And that's what we had set up at the paint shop. So new injectors, fuel system. Remember, we had a problem before with the injector getting 10 microns. Well, this system also has in it the forced fuel system, where you've got a fuel pump pumping fuel into a half-gallon container. Then out of the container, there's a high pressure to the throttle body. The system had one of those. This is the container right here. Okay? You can see that. With the top off, this is the filter system that's in it. This is the top. Pull the top off. This is your high pressure pump. Now, for those of you that are Phytech guys and you have a forced fuel system, what I would like you to do is to go ahead and pull this thing up. Okay? You see this hose. Wait a minute. This hose right here, coming out of the high pressure pump into the casing. Early on, Phytech had some problem with this one little hose blowing out. Right? So what I'd like you to do is pull your forced fuel system away. Take the top off, and it'll come off. There'll be a seal on the top of it. Take it off and check that hose. Okay, it's I believe it's a 1/4 inch fuel hose, 2 clamps, real simple to see. I want you to be sure that that hose is a good hose. Okay. The filter screen at the bottom of it, you see right here, had a little bit of dirt in it. Okay, and so did the bottom of the forced fuel system, which means fuel dirtier than 10 microns got into the forced fuel system, contaminated the bottom of that, and then it sucked it on up into the injector. So if you have had injector issues and you have a forced fuel system, you need to open your forced fuel system and clean it. Okay? My coach did not have the forced fuel system and went straight through. A little bit easier to clean, but this system, you must clean out this tank as well. Clean off the screen, put it all back in there, put it all back together. Mine's tucked away right over here underneath the engine cover lip. All right. We put high test gas in it. Why? To go faster? No. Wanted to try to clean everything out and mix anything that was still in the tanks. And it's a good thing that we did, because I did end up cleaning the 100 micron glass filter 2 times. Okay, it got less and less, which means that we solved it. But there was still some material in there. So I really would tell you guys, whether you have original tanks or aluminum tank or any tanks, having that first filter. Now listen, I've seen several people use these filters. I would not put anything in the fuel line that has a clamp on it above the motor. Okay, All these filters I'm talking about are down below on the frame rail. And again, I put them on the outside of the frame rail so I can get to them. Okay. But any of those filters need to be outside the coach, not on top of the coach. The fuel line that goes to, if you use a carburetor, the fuel line needs to be a solid fuel line out of the carburetor down to the mechanical pump. Any fuel line that's on top or in the engine compartment needs to be a clamped hose, a fitted, a custom-made hose, because I just don't want to have a possibility of a clamp coming loose and fuel getting on top of the motor. Very, very important. I have seen a couple of guys do that. I really would suggest having any of your filtration system, any brakes in the system, to be below. So if it leaks, it goes down, not onto the motor. Okay? So first thing that we had to do, we knew that we had a fuel issue. Okay? So that's the first thing we saw. Right? Because the coach had sat for a while, we did everything we could, check all the fluids, belts, hoses, all that kind of stuff. Turn off anything that was superfluous, anything we didn't need, and then we headed out. Got to Gainesville. Okay. And I saw the alternator light go, whoom, flash. It went out. And all of a sudden, we have no charge. What happened? Well, the alternator, go away. The alternator went out. What happened? Well, you know, at 50 years old, it doesn't really matter what happened. Something happened, right? But basically what happened, the trigger circuit on the alternator, when I say trigger circuit, the alternator has three pieces. It has a big 8-gauge wire coming off. Then it has a connector on the side. And in here is constant 12 volts. And then you have a smaller wire. This is the trigger. This is the nichrome wire circuit that I've talked in many, many videos about. Well, for whatever reason, this circuit went out. What does it do? It supplies a voltage to this alternator to turn on the regulator that's just a little bit lower than what the reference voltage is, or the constant voltage here. Well, that circuit burned out for whatever reason, and I'm in Gainesville with this coach. We found the only place in Gainesville that knows how to build alternators. Alternator and starter specialist, AAMAC. Great place. The last place in Gainesville that build alternators. Back in the day, there were many, many places. I mean, Gator Nationals is in Gainesville. But it's all dwindled down. The industry, the business has dwindled down. This one guy. Okay. And as it turned out, you know, Gainesville is a small town. And this guy said, GMC Motorhomes, yeah, I know those. You know Frank Jenkins. Those have been in the community for some time. Y'all know Frank Jenkins. Frank made for decades fiberglass parts, and many, many people have them. Well, he was down the street from this alternator shop, and this guy's dad and Frank used to trade insults. So he took our alternator and converted it to a one-wire alternator. You say, why? Well, remember, this trigger wire no longer works. It does not trigger our Type 1 alternator. I've been talking for many, many years to convert anyway. This coach had not been converted. It was still using a 3-wire alternator. So they swapped it over to a 1-wire alternator. We had to get a Uber to go over there and get it. Kind of interesting. That was the first night. We got about an hour hour into our trip. First night, that was just before it happened. We spent in Gainesville at Hampton. Next morning, I took the alternator out. Now, if you have a 3-wire system, you have a battery isolator, right? You have a battery isolator, right? And here's your vehicle battery positive, and there is a jumper going to here. This side goes down to your boost solenoid to the left side, okay? And this one, the center one, goes directly to the alternator. That's the output of the alternator, okay? So now we have a 1-wire alternator. We do not have a trigger circuit because it excites itself. But what that means is the output of this alternator needs to see 12 volts constant, okay? Now, on the isolator, it doesn't. It sees 0. So what we have to do is to take that off of there. This lower one is your vehicle battery positive, your engine electrical system. This needs to be converted and go down to here, okay? That way, vehicle battery positive is connected here. This goes down to your battery. The alternator sees power, it will excite itself, okay? So the modification I had to do in the coach was to take this off of here and put it to here. That's the only thing. Remember, our living area is off. We turned it off completely. All right. What happened to the alternator? Again, it's 50 years old. It doesn't matter. And we did not check other than fired up. And yes, it had output. I will tell you this. The output was 15.1. Okay. Have Mac Dash. 15.1. You say, oh man, that's great. That's a lot of power. You really should see with a proper regulator about 14.1. When it's a higher voltage, that either means your battery's weak and it's trying to charge it real hard, or possibly the regulators got a problem. My feeling is with 15.1 leaving the paint shop, my guess is our alternator was already hurt and got into the heat cycle and it went out. What went out, again, doesn't matter. What we have to deal with is what we have. So if you're in this situation and you're driving your coach and your alternator goes out, you need to check those 3 voltages to see if you have constant, which means all the time, that connector. The small wire will only have power when the key goes on. It'll be a little lower voltage, but any voltage. You turn the key on, it should have voltage. Turn the key off, it should go away. Okay? If that doesn't happen, that alternator can't work because it doesn't have the proper voltages. If that does happen, and you do have those voltages, and there is no output on that alternator, that means that alternator is bad. Okay? No other tests needed. You got power here, you got power there, with the key on, fired up, no output from the A gauge wire. Alternator is bad. All right. So we had to deal with, make sure that we had our fuel system set up, and we had to be sure that after the first hour we had 12 volts. Those are the 2 basic things that you're going to need. Right? That took us on into Bessemer. That heater work, all that kind of stuff. That took us on into Bessemer. We had cool bearings. We had cool brakes. Had a warm heater. And from that point on, the drive took on another dimension because I had Mark Creel with me. Had another set of eyeballs, another set of hands to work on it. All right, well, look, I want you to understand that when you pick up a coach, don't assume everything is going to work only be sure that things you totally need work, and then monitor those. All right. All right. I hope this helps you. We'll be more talking about this trip. Uh, oh, the number one thing on this whole project: don't drive at night, and don't do it in the winter. Honestly, I mean, if you take me, laying on the side of the road cleaning that filter in the dark, in the cold, was not fun. Was not fun. Not that it's going to ever be fun, but it was less fun. How's that? And whenever we had a problem and it was dark, we had to stop. So my personal opinion is you should travel during the day. I would go when it's tempered outside, watch all your gauges, and go 60 miles an hour. All right? Well, I hope there's something in here you can use. It sure was what got us to, well, not completely to Wyoming, but I'll explain more about that. Uh, Biggest thing was to get out of Florida, and we did that. All right. Thanks. Hit like, share. Ranch hands, this is part of our journey, and we'll see you next time.